Jet! Good job today, man. One at a time, and we'll get the job done. Y'all know what to say. On three. 1, 2, 3. And the home of the Jets.
What is going on, everybody? A midweek summer special here. JetsCentral, how you doing, man?
Yo, what's going on, man? Armin, what's going on, bro?
Doing great, man. I'm actually set. We haven't talked in about 2 weeks now because last week I had chaos going on, so we kind of missed the show. We're back tonight. We're trying to stay to Tuesdays, but unfortunately our schedules just aren't working out. But we'll get back to the regular schedule. But I'm excited, man, because a lot's happened since we last talked. We've heard from Engstrand, we've heard from Wilkes, we've heard from Aaron Glenn, we've heard from a series of players, which is really interesting because I got a lot of hot takes on that for you. So it's gonna be a fun one, man. Because I'm honestly, day by day, I'm getting more and more encouraged. I like the direction of the team for a variety of reasons. How are you feeling, man?
I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, obviously, those big time storylines aren't there. It's just this section of the off season. There's only so many, things worth diving into. As far as like, by the way, like the OTA practices, it's so hard to like take things away because it's, when you don't have contact, offensive guys just play free, quarterbacks, like everything is just different, right? Defensive lines are they're at an automatic disadvantage. Just the total trench play is just completely up in the air. You could have, a guy flashing and making plays, and then when pads come on, he disappears, and then vice versa. Guys that, don't really look all that great when there's no contact, but then as soon as they can really start getting physical, all of a sudden they're just popping off the tape. So, yeah, man, I think next week, obviously training camp is going to be super exciting, but I'm honestly looking forward to minicamp too.
Yeah, and that's funny because I learned that lesson because I used to go to OTAs all the time and all these practices, and I walk away like, oh my God, this guy's going to be great. This guy's going to be a star. I walk away like we have 22 Pro Bowlers, and the minute the pads come on, you're like, oh, that just changed. That just changed. Really? Contact and physicality changes a lot of things. So it's cool to be excited. It's cool to see a lot of things. A lot of it's just learn the scheme, man. Show up, learn the scheme. And I think the overall message from this coaching staff is they want to teach, man. Attention to detail. Just basically do your job and do it right. And the players are buying in because the players are almost regurgitating everything Aaron Glenn is saying. And to me, it is so refreshing. Starting yesterday with Quincy Williams. Quincy Williams said, literally, Aaron Glenn called him up and said, you know what? Here's what I want you to do. Like, he took away any kind of like gray area. Listen, man, I think you're a great player. Here's the things you need to do to improve. Here's how I want you to flourish in our defense. Like, he was proactive about it. And that was like, you hear Quincy Williams talk about it, how he wants him to be a leader, how he wants to be a captain. Like, all this stuff, I love it, dude, because we talk about culture change. That's exactly how you do it, man. When you get your top players to buy in and become your spokesperson, to be those guys in the locker room that kind of get their position groups in order and all on the same page.
Yeah, dude, 100%. It's like, no, of course, no disrespect to Saleh and just kind of, because I feel like every time I make a positive a positive point about Aaron Glenn, or like, oh, I'm loving the new culture, I'm loving the new vision or the message or whatever identity, whatever it may be, I always have this like negative with like Saleh, Ulbrich, Joe Douglas that I'm always bringing up. So no disrespect to those guys, but it definitely feels like everyone in the locker room is just loving what's being said, what's being talked about, loving the plan in place. Whether you're like an older veteran, whether you're kind of like one of those middle of the road guys like Quincy Williams, or if you're a young guy, someone approved, someone with like a long, resume, someone who's like proven. It feels like there is 100% complete buy-in, and that's really, really cool. I don't know if you caught it, but I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Bless Austin, you remember him, corner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he was on a podcast, and he was talking about, it was actually a really good watch. It was like 30, 40 minutes. And he was talking about his time with the Jets, and some of the players on that team and everything. I found because he was always one of my favorite players, like in that Gase, Greg Williams era. Because I liked his story and his potential and whatnot. He was like my type of player. But anyway, he had like one or two like little, quotes basically talking about like the motivation and culture was not there. And granted, it was Gase, it wasn't, Saleh, but he talked about like you walk in and like the lights are flickering, the walls are gray, no one like that fire isn't really there. Like, like this is the New York Jets, like you got to come in and win. And you kind of think of like the great teams, the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills now, right? There's the Packers. There's this like mystique about the organization.
It's their standard.
Yes, a standard. And this is something that you've been talking about it a lot. I've been talking about it a lot last season. It's like, where is the urgency? Where is the standard? Where's the accountability? And look, obviously we haven't even seen these guys coach a game, have one real week of practice. So, right now it is all talk, but from what we're hearing, I'm loving it.
100%. And it's like the things that you hear from the players. Like I'm all about the press conferences now because this is their first impression of this staff. They're saying like the coaching staff is aligned. They're all on the same page. They all have a clear vision. They're all saying the same thing. It's like that is so important because you don't want guys trying to figure out going in different directions. Like they're all like, and then you have like you listen to Garrett talk, Quincy. They're all saying the same exact thing, man. And like, that's how you unite the locker room. There's no more confusion. We know what our vision is. We know what our blueprint is. We know our keys to success. Now we got to follow it. And that's clearing up a lot of the dysfunction of last year and the chaos of last year and all like, even like with Justin Fields, not that big personality. He's kind of unassuming, a quiet leader. He's respected, but like they're all working in silence. Like this and listen, hard-nosed blue collar team, and they're embracing it and liking it. And and like the one thing I love the most, and I actually just did an interview with Antoine Stilick on New York Daily News, and he confirmed this. Aaron Glenn literally walks position group to position group and gives hands-on technique and teaching. Where he's like, all right, today I'm with, but he like in the same practice. Like I went to practice under Saleh, dude. He'd stand there like the overseer, the CEO. He looks over like the whole building. All right, I see the whole building. Aaron Glenn is hands-on in the position groups, every one of them, dude. Pointing out, here, man, do this, do this. That's the kind of CEO type head coach we've wanted because that's what you need when you have a very young team that needs attention to detail. They need to learn how to win. They learn how to compete at a higher level. And that to me was so just reassuring. And I get the comments can be, bro, it's only June 4th. I get it. But this is how you build your foundation. And the players now know what to expect when they come in the building. Like you talked about it. So this coaching staff is high energy, a lot of communication, and a lot of attention to detail. If you know that's what they expect, that's what you have to give them. And it's being established now.
Yeah, dude, 100%. I mean, we've heard, and it's also pretty cool too, because at like this stage, we have a couple Aaron Glenn pressers under our belt. We knew that it was going to be kind of like that physical, violent, how we want to play the game. We knew that about Aaron Glenn. You listen to former Lions coaches, former Lions players, or current Lions players, formerly working with Aaron Glenn, talk about AG, his coaching style, things like that. Like at this point, we're all assuming, but with all of these different press conferences, now in the books, we have it just feels like it's more. We have more knowledge on the team and kind of what to expect. It's not so much assuming, but we also heard from Steve Wilks, Tanner Strand. Again, you touched on a couple players here. I actually walked away from the Steve Wilks presser pretty damn impressed, man. Like he seems like, if you want to talk about, so what was the reaction when Steve Wilks was when he was hired on initially is DC? Everyone was talking about the positives. Oh, he has head coaching experience. He has play calling experience. He's an NFL veteran coach. He's been around successful defenses. He's made it work in multiple stops. He's experienced working with really, really talented defenses and not so talented defenses. Blitzes a lot, right? Someone who can maybe mentor Glenn in the off the field, how to be a head coach, how to schedule, how to, set up like a plan of attack, game planning throughout the week, game preparation, things like that, traveling, stuff like that. And Steve Wilks showed up to this presser, and this was like the first real time that we've heard from him. And he literally just confirmed everything. Like just talked about, it seems like Wilks has a really clear understanding of his role and everything that, fans have been talking about so far, Wilkes addressed. And it's just like, boom, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm excited about this, this, and this. Went into details about certain players, Cisco, Quincy Williams taking, more so that leadership style role. Sherwood was another one. And it was just really cool. It was really cool hearing just someone sounding so prepared as a defensive coordinator, for the first kind of intro presser for him.
And the feedback from the players has been he's super energetic. He's got a passion for the game, and it comes out in his coaching. And to follow up with that, I was really impressed by Tanner Engstrand, where to me, I felt like he's a head coach in the waiting, man. Like he talks like a head coach. Like he just speaks the game with like he's intelligent, very well spoken, supposedly a great communicator with his players. Like everybody knows what's expected of him. The attention to detail, again, I'll keep saying that. But I like the way he handled it. And the one thing about this staff, they don't get pushed around by the media at all.
Yeah,
They like even Engstrand, like, well, your first time being a play caller. He's like, well, that's not even true. It's not my first time being a play caller. Like even Wilkes, he keep back people off too. Like, listen, man, you're not going to discount my resume. You're not going to discount our staff or our players. And as a united team, they all have that. It's not like it's like a chip on their shoulder. Like, no, dude, we know what we're doing here. Like, let's not start taking shots at us in friggin' May. And I love that about
we
that.
know who we are. We
100%.
know who we are, and we don't need, outsiders, external people, outside the building trying to poke and prod and, grab storylines and create distractions where they don't, necessarily. Like, I was actually watching I was rewatching the Glenn presser today because I was busy yesterday. And I don't, I don't remember what the question was, but a question came up and Glenn he literally said that it was an unfair question.
Yep.
I don't know if you remember that section.
100%. Yeah.
And I'm not saying, it's cool that Aaron Glenn is barking back to the media, but I think I think it's like, as fans, it's nice to see a head coach who's just like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm preaching. I'm talking the talk, but I'm walking the walk, and this is how I'm going to do things. It's my football team. This team had no direction. They had no accountability. There was zero culture.
Well, and it was about Michael Clemens. And the thing was, Michael Clemens is like, well, he hasn't been to OTAs. He's like, why are you saying that? He has been here. He's just not here today in a voluntary thing. And I think that's going to resonate in the locker room where the players know he has their back. Like, listen, man, like, you know what I mean? Like, Saleh was kind of wishy-washy with certain things. We're talking circles. You're like, I don't know what the hell he's saying. Aaron Glenn's like, no. Let's cut this off right now. He's been here, just not today.
Because that 100%, bro. Because like you're thinking about kind of the fan outlook on certain players, and I would say right now the stock is down for Clemens, so it's easy to piggyback
100%.
on this idea. Oh, well, Clemens isn't showing up. What's that about? And then Glenn is just like, no, he has been here. He's just not here today. Yep. So to your point, man, has the back of his players. That was actually one of the big positives from what we've heard from like Detroit fans specifically. Yep. Like, players love Glenn because he has their back. And I also think him being a former player, him sitting in that seat, being in that role, helps him, because he could probably look back on different moments saying like, oh, I wish a coach had my back, or it actually did happen and I really appreciated it. So I know how a player feels and thinks. So I'm going to treat players with, that same type of, respect.
Another telling comment was with Josh Reynolds. He said, well, do players ask you what Aaron Glenn thinks about this? He's like, no, he just tells them. Like, Aaron Glenn will just tell you what he thinks. Like, there is no like, well, like, I'll wait till the office. Like, no, he's going to go right to your face. Say, listen, this is what I think about this. This is what we need to do. And that up front is like, it takes away any gray area. Like, like we've all had jobs where you don't know what your boss is thinking, or you play sports and the coach never talks to you, whatever. Like, you feel left out, or you don't know what's going on, or does he like me? Does he not like me? Am I doing the right thing? That's gone. He's like, this is, he's upfront and personal. And he said, like, he's demanding, not demeaning. He'll be very demanding from you because he wants the best out of you. And I genuinely think a lot of these players want to be coached up. We've talked about this in the past, man. Some of these guys love the game of football. They genuinely love the game, love to play it, and they want to be their best. And if they get pushed more and more, they exceed and they succeed more. And that's what they want. So this could resonate with a lot of players. I think the ones that doesn't probably aren't going to be here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like you're thinking about when Glenn was first hired and kind of the optics around the hire. It's like, this is Saleh all over again, right? He's a defensive guy. He's coming in with a lot of energy. 49ers players, Lions players loved him. You have NFL vets talking about them like as coaches that can connect with players, because we had the whole Richard Sherman, backing and everything like that. But I think when it comes to Coach Glenn, and it's not to discount Saleh's resume at all. I mean, he worked under some great coaches. Pete Carroll, Shanahan had, I think, a short tenure in Jacksonville as well, linebacker coach. But when you're just kind of observing, and again, it's early, it's the first week of June. We really only have May to go off of.
Yeah,
we have faith. And funny enough, Glenn actually addressed this. The Jets have not faced any adversity.
Exactly.
And because that's one thing that Glenn has been talking about, right? Handling adversity, being able to communicate, being able to play, an aggressive style of football. But we haven't really had any sort of negatives to talk about. There's no injuries. There's no humiliating losses. There's no moments where the Jets have been like exposed or embarrassed or anything like that. There's been no butt fumble moments, no, sort of weird storylines, leaks coming out of the building that they have to address, which is it's totally positive so far.
No, I'm excited, man. And it's like, there's a lot of, again, it's early June, but we're trying to assess what's going on in the building and how they're rebuilding this team, rebuilding this culture, how the players are responding to it, which is really interesting. And then as you see the OTAs covered, you see certain storylines, which you actually made a video on, which is really interesting, is, everybody right now, Justin Fields is front and center where everybody wants to analyze what is he going to be for the Jets. And he has things that everybody's worried about, holds on to the ball too long, can't go through his progressions. And it was funny because they're like, I understand what everybody's talking about, but we also got to keep in mind, new team, new players, new scheme. There's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be growing pains. That's just, especially in May. So they're like, oh man, this practice, he's been brutal. He's holding on to the ball too long. I'm like, all right, that could be an issue, but it could also be he's still learning. Like these kind of reactions are more of a concern to me in September, October during games. But in this early stage of the process, it's like, all right, let's easy on this narrative already. Let's not start, discounting this kid or kind of pouring on him when he hasn't been here for 3 months.
Yeah, and what's the expectation? 15 of 15, 3 touchdowns on day 2 of practice with new teammates and new coach,
new routes.
New players around Fields. He's brand new to New Jersey. Like,
it's crazy.
I don't know. Like the expectation can't be Pat Mahomes.
Not like June 4th.
Fields has weaknesses. Fields is not a top 10 quarterback, but Fields has strengths, and gosh, man, it's just too early. And who knows, maybe Fields will have processing issues during games. Maybe that does become a thing. But until that happens, right now I feel like it's a little overly critical to look at non-contact, non-padded practices where every offensive player knows they're not going to get hit. Where's the urgency for Fields to get rid of the football on like a subconscious level?
Yep.
It's one thing to whatever coach calls a play, he gets up to the line of scrimmage, he snaps it, and it's just, you have a coach saying, get the ball out. Yep. But if there's no defensive end that's actually going to drive you into the ground, you will potentially hang on to the football for that split second.
Yep.
And where in a game, if Myles Garrett's coming off the edge, the ball's probably going to be out. Yep. So, I think it's really, really important to not look into it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers offenses throughout the years have always been like weird and clunky and strange, or in the actual regular season.
Yep.
I mean, look at the Bengals in September. They're like a mess. They just can't get on the same page or anything. It's not until they really start, kind of getting into the thick of it where things start to smooth out and it starts to look like a well-oiled machine. So, to say, oh man, Fields holding on the football too long. It's May 25th. It's May 26th. Something we got to worry about. It's like, let's give him a break here.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lazy narrative, in my opinion. Not being a jerk, but it is. It's like, listen, I know that's the perception coming into this. Give this kid some time. Let's get in deep in the training camp and joint practices and see what happens then. Let's not talk about this now. It's keep your eye on it. But that's like, it's similar to with Arian Smith, where they brought him in here. There's a concern with drops, right? We know he's got world-class speed, but drops the ball a lot. He makes like 3 catches, wide receiver 2. All right, similar to the quarterback. if you're not getting lit up by a safety or corner in practice, you have a little more confidence catching the ball, right? Like I train fighters.
Yeah, you don't hear footsteps or anything.
No, dude, when you're training fighters, we do light sparring or technical sparring. If you know you're not getting cracked, everybody looks great. Until you start getting hit a little bit and your eyes getting a little, then you're like, oh, everything changes. So while we're excited about Aaron Smith, got to keep it all in perspective. It is so early where it's great. He's showing good hands, but let's see him under duress. Let's see when the quarter's getting really physical with him, with pads on, getting bumped around, getting smacked around a little bit. Then you'll see what he's made of and see how far he has to go to be a big time contributor in this offense.
Yeah, like when I'm thinking of like NFL OTAs, granted, I've never been a part of an NFL OTA program or anything like that. But when I'm thinking about this section of the offseason, like what is the goal here? Especially for like the on-field stuff. Like for me, it's all about chemistry. It's about learning the system. It's about creating bonds might not be the best word, but
chemistry.
Yeah. I guess just kind of creating that continuity, and it's not just like Garrett and Justin. It's Justin with Joe Tippmann at center. It's Justin handing the football off with Braylon Allen. It's getting a good understanding. Okay, how does what's the difference in speed with Isaiah Davis and Breece Hall when they're lined up in the backfield on the same play? Does one get to the kind of that mesh point quicker than the other? Now a couple reps happen, it's just like, okay, like I'm starting to feel how certain guys like to play. How does Tanner Ingstrand like to coach me? Am I like how are players responding from like a coach's standpoint? Does Malachi Moore like to be coached really, really tough, really hard? Or is he more so that guy where it's just like, hey, let's pull him off to the side, talk to him a little bit and kind of keep it moving? Again, kind of being technicians, learning routes, these guys are professionals. Obviously, for the undrafted guys and rookies, it's their first time doing it, but it's kind of like, let's try to do our best to iron out the kinks on like a macro perspective, right? Being where you need to be, getting to the line, calling plays, getting in and out of the huddle, things like that. Understanding, okay, Garrett wants to break here. This is his tendency. I know there was like a big storyline with Rodgers and Garrett Wilson and stuff, like when Devontae Adams first came in, like Devontae was going to, show Garrett like, okay, like certain preferences with Rodgers on like how to get in and out of routes and everything like that. But, I think at this section of the offseason, if you're not being hit, if there's really no contact allowed, it's really like when you're going through these types of drills, it's more so like, let's just ingrain these guys in the system, in the culture. Let's get them working with one another. And let's also, from a coaching staff perspective, kind of create these profiles on players. How do they like to be coached? How much can we put on their plate? Well, at the same time, of course, getting physically stronger, and also mentally stronger too, for that matter, but in conditioning and everything like that.
Because you figure this is an evaluation period for Muji and Glenn. Okay, we inherited this team. We think we know what they are. Now we're slowly seeing what they are. Early stages. What's their level of conditioning? What's their physicality? And then as the pads come on, you evaluate more. But it's like, all right, what's their work ethic? What's their film study like? What's their commitment to the game? Like, you're learning a lot of different things here. Then you got to figure out some contract things too, which could get interesting next week, because as of now, the media has not talked to Sauce Gardner and they haven't talked to Breece Hall. So those are two guys that could come front and center next week. Mandatory minicamp, a lot more media availability. I'm curious how they handle it. I'm assuming they both show up, because usually a contract thing, if you want to make a statement, mandatory minicamp is when you make that statement. You don't show up, you have all the fanfare. But I'm wondering, do you think that happens with any of these guys, that they don't show up next week?
No. What does it really benefit? I mean, Gardner better. Like, I think Gardner should show up, because he's in the last year of his rookie deal, but there's still, if I'm right here on the math, there still should be the 5th-year option.
They have it. Yep.
Right. But what I'm saying is he's not in that 5th year.
Yep.
So it's not like he's in Breece's situation where this is it. Like, this is the last hoorah with the Jets right now, like under contract terms. James Cook, same situation with the Bills, right? 2nd round pick, no 5th-year option. Now you start getting into the business of like the franchise tag, which I feel like less and less teams are doing, just because it's getting so expensive.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I mean, I just don't really see how it would benefit anyone to skip it with the new coaching staff coming in. If it was Saleh and everybody kind of back and everyone knows the systems and everything, I could see maybe more people skipping it, maybe like a Brees Hall or something. But you got to make a good impression on a coach. Like if you're skipping it to get a new contract, well, by skipping, you're giving reps to Braylon, you're giving reps to your competitors, and you're also subtracting moments, reps, conversations, meetings with the people that are going to be giving you what you want, which is the new contract. So to me, it's a lose-lose.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett Wilson already addressed it. He said he wants to be here because he wants to learn. He wants to be a part of the team to learn the offense, get chemistry. Justin Fields, like I said, Sauce and Brees have not met the media yet, so they'll have their chance next week, assuming that they're both there. To me personally, if you're gonna have the play of I want a new contract, I would show up to mandatory minicamp, not to get the fine, and then you don't practice. But listen, I'm here, I'm learning, I'm observing, but I want my new deal. And the reason why I would do that is because Muji and Glenn both actively said we want to keep our young players that are stars. We want to keep, we have great talent. We want to keep it in house. These guys are like, listen, we're established. You're praising us endlessly in your press conferences. We want to get paid. We've earned that, especially when you've seen all these other teams like the Eagles and whoever Bills proactively keeping their players. The trend in the NFL is, don't be reactive, be proactive. You can make a case the Jets should probably already done one of these deals, but they haven't. This is next week. Things get interesting, especially when they have cap space now. Like this should be their wiggle room. This year, their time, their period where they should probably get a deal done.
Yeah, I will say with those teams though that you mentioned, they all have established coaches and general managers who have been there for a decent amount of time. Whereas the Jets, it's like Mushi's walking in, Aaron Glenn's walking in. Yeah, they can know and watch the Jets what happened last season, but they didn't draft any of these guys. What if, because we all know, different teams and different GMs have different preferences on prospects, right? And that's what makes the draft so cool, so interesting. What if Glenn wasn't really high on, a former second round pick or former first round pick or something? And so his idea of that player is like, yo, I'm open-minded. I'm going to give him a shot for sure, but I'm not as maybe tied to that player as Joe Douglas because he was the one that drafted him in the first round and guaranteed, hey, you're going to be a building block here. With Glenn coming in, it's like this team was a 5-win squad. But then on the flip side, maybe there's an undrafted guy. Maybe there was a 6th round pick that the Lions really, really wanted. And they didn't get him because he was picked by the Jets. And it's just like maybe one of these, lower guys on the roster, like a Malachi Corley or someone.
Yeah.
Trying to think of someone else. Maybe, maybe Glenn absolutely loved Tony Adams or something like that. And it's just like, I cannot wait to get him on the field. Like I loved his tape back in college. I've heard nothing but good things. And now I'm kind of stepping into a situation where, hey, we would have, picked this player, we really loved his profile. Yeah. And now we actually do have a chance to work with it. So it's kind of like a 2-pronged type of thing, right? Where it's all new ideas, fresh ideas. No, I like the approach of nothing is guaranteed. We're not just going to hand out a job because of your name or your contract. I think you're getting off on the wrong foot if you walk in and you're like, okay, we have 95% of our starting lineup confirmed, and no one really has a chance to earn their starting gig.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Glenn seems like when he took this job, he knew what his roster was made of. He knew the players and the level of detail about the players. He speaks to it. Talked about Rucker and talked about Quincy Williams. So you figure with a player like Sauce, he knows what he's getting in Sauce. Arguably one of the best corners in football. Coming off a down year for a variety of reasons. When you have concerns about coaching and culture and everything else, you could probably write some of that off for that. Maybe it's just the environment he was in. So at some point, you got to say, I'm going to create this kind of environment where he's going to be productive. I think he's going to be great. I want to be here for the next 6 years. So you have they retained Jamin Sherwood, kept him here for 3 years. So it's like, I think with Sauce especially, it's easier to get a deal done because you know his value. Garrett Wilson's kind of tricky because you got to figure out what's his potential, what's his demands, all these different things. You got to get one of them done, dude. I genuinely think that, especially in June. Like I figure now it's like, and Moochie talked about during the draft. Like, listen, after the draft, after all this stuff dies down, we'll review contracts. Okay, you have cap space. You know what these guys are in theory. If you're going to get it done now because the market's only getting higher.
Yeah, I think the Jets right now are fourth in total cap space,
Yep.
or at least they were, a week ago, or 3 days ago here. And I don't really think that makes an impact, obviously, for Gardner and Wilson this season, but for the potential free agents that are out there, or guys that are currently searching for teams, the Julian Blackmans, the Jadeveon Clowneys, Keenan Allens, Shaq Thompson, Amari Cooper, like there are some players that, if news comes out in 25 minutes, hey, the Jets are signing Amari Cooper, 1-year deal. The Jets are signing Jadeveon Clowney, 1 year, 5.5 mil. Like, is that really going to hurt the team at all? Absolutely not. With $34 million in cap space, from an NFL perspective, of course, what is $3 million to a team that has over 30 million in cap space? If that player can provide depth, provide leadership, provide a veteran, maybe assistance, like in the case of Shaq Thompson, worked with Steve Wilkes, good fit for the system. If Jamie and Sherwood were to go down with injury,
Yep.
day 3, Francisco Mauaga would be penciled in as the starter. Is that something that you want to think about? No, not really. But it's, kind of having that proactive approach. So, I think I think there's Zadarius Smith is another one, like maybe an edge rusher if Jermaine Johnson has to be held out until training camp or whatever the situation is, like give him time to heal. And now we have this huge chunk of reps that needs to be, taken by other defensive ends. Is Zadarius Smith a cheap 1-year deal that we can bring in?
It's funny you mentioned him because I was thinking about it where we all love Jermaine Johnson and he got hurt early. Unfortunately, got hurt early in the year last year. It's like, all right, he's got plenty of time to recover, recuperate, and hopefully come back bigger, better, faster than ever. But when's that going to be? And I don't think it's fair to say he's going to come back and be exactly like he was prior to last season. Like, rising pass rusher, great, explosive off the edge. So just say in theory, it's not the case. You have him, you have Will McDonald. Who do you have behind him? I know Rashad Weaver early on splashed him, but I'm wondering now that the Jets have more cap space and they kind of are figuring out what they have, if they maybe start tinkering with their roster, saying, okay, listen, pass rush is a premium for us. We need to hit the quarterback. Maybe they start making moves now. Maybe they start getting, maybe not say aggressive, but more putting feelers out there, maybe at wide receiver, maybe at tight end, maybe at the defensive end, because there are some legitimate holes on this team, for being fair. Because a lot of these position groups are unknowns, right? We're kind of hoping, well, like the tight end group could be good. The wide receiver group could be good. But if you bring in that veteran to kind of solidify things, it makes life a lot easier for the Jets.
Yeah, one position too that's kind of gone by the wayside, or sorry, not one position, but one area of the team that before the draft, man, like it was a pretty big concern, and it's still, I would say, a pretty big concern, but it's not really being talked about all that much, is stopping the run. Could we go out and maybe acquire another D tackle? Raekwon Davis, former 2nd-round pick out of Alabama, 6'7", long, lanky type of D tackle who hasn't really worked out with the Dolphins and the Colts. But, again, what is, like, if we had $7 million in cap space, $9 million, okay, 1-year contract is all of a sudden 10% of your remaining cap space. I get it. You want to have at least some flexibility. Okay, you have an injury, Justin Fields, whatever it is, like you need flexibility during the season. Waiver claims as well. Like if someone all of a sudden gets cut off a team, like a young player, and you want to bring him in, you don't want to be like, okay, well, we have $6 million in space. Yeah. This is all we can really work with. But again, bro, like if we have 34 mil, I mean, theoretically, we can sign Amari Cooper, 1 year, 10 mil, drop down to 24 mil, and still be in a really good position.
Yeah, especially
of course, I do. Sorry to cut you off. We got to mention too. It's a 2-way street. These guys also have to want to come to the Jets. It's not like we have our choice and contracts out there, and everyone's begging to come play for the Jets. Like if it's for one of these guys like Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen or someone, if they have 2 contract offers, one by the Ravens and one by the Jets, who knows what would happen. So,
but I think that's kind of where I'm most concerned, is on the offensive playmakers on offense, like reliable playmakers, where we could talk about Josh Reynolds all we want, but he's probably wide receiver 3 or 4. We know what Alan Lazard is. Gibson and Corley, complete unknowns. Like there's a legitimate concern to wide receiver group. So if you want to spend money now, like I think the Jets' conservative, cautious approach at this point made sense. See what you get in the draft, see what the market is. But now you kind of figured out, okay, we may have holes here. And we've talked about this. My biggest concern is that you want to have playmakers around Justin Fields where he feels comfortable getting rid of the football. And the guy's going to be where he's supposed to be, right? You have all these young guys, inexperienced Aaron Smith running around trying to figure things out. You don't want to see all these mental errors and mistakes because you're being frugal. Spend the money to bring in the guy if he's available now, because now this is like you're basically your second tier free agency or third tier free agency where you can kind of, add those pieces now that you assess what you have on your roster.
The risk is so much smaller,
Yep.
like the worst place to be in, which is realistic, by the way, but let's just say Jets pass. We don't sign any more weapons. We get to the start of the season, and all of a sudden, Keenan Allen, who signed a cheap 1-year deal, is making plays. He's an impactful piece. Maybe he's not a top 15 wide receiver putting up great numbers, but he's actually productive. And the Jets, on the other hand, are like, we could have really used this other weapon. Yeah. Good thing we have this $30 million in cap space, which is, going to essentially be irrelevant next season.
Yeah.
We could have used, that's why the cap space is there. I'm not saying spend every penny. I'm not saying sign guys to 4-year deals, but at this stage in the summer, think about Morgan Moses, bro, when he signed, how big of a boost that was. Not a top end draft pick by the Jets, not a first 2-3 wave, type of free agent, was not a multi-year thing. I believe it was just a 1-year
deal. Yep.
1-year deal. He comes in, instant starter, no questions asked, puts together a great year. In fact, we should have kept him.
100%.
He ends up going to Baltimore a little later on, but point is, it's like you can still get some really, really good players, some really impactful pieces. And even if they're not starters, they're good depth pieces. I know we harped on it so much, but when Aaron Rodgers got hurt, it would have been really, really nice to have a veteran backup behind Zach that we could have pulled the plug on Wilson maybe a little earlier, or maybe Wilson would have been more prepared to play if there was another vet in the, in the quarterback room, because with the Achilles, Rodgers had to bounce to do the rehab. So it's not like he's in the meetings. All of a sudden, we're right back to square one with Zach Wilson sitting in the room with no veteran quarterback. And he has to be the guy. So I don't know. I feel like you could be a little bit more free with the spending of money at this section of the offseason. But of course, they have to check boxes, fit the culture. Most importantly, they're actually going to be a contributor in one way or another. I don't want the Jets spending money on a Hassan Reddick type of situation.
But I agree with you. But this is where Darren Muji earns his money, because you have to build in the back end of your roster. You need your role players, your special teams players, and this is where you get your what's his face? Joe Douglas got Bryce Huff. You get guys like that out of the blue. But then you have a guy like John Idzik, who's kind of cheap with his contracts and couldn't sign guys worth garbage. You know what I mean? So you've got to find these value signings now when you have this cap space and not get taken advantage of. But I don't think the Jets will stand pat, but I think they need to. There are concerns on this roster. You have a lot of young, inexperienced guys where there are holes where they can be dealt with, and there's players that are still available. That's so. I'm curious to see how they handle it for sure, because it's a work in progress.
Yeah, dude. Now that I'm thinking about it, Quincy Williams was actually a waiver claim.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, so there's moves like that where you've got to find those guys, because you are one Garrett Wilson injury away from being in deep trouble. Or if you look at tight end, what if Mason Taylor gets banged up? Is Jimmy Ruckert your guy? That's what we're going to count on. Safety position. There's different holes where it's great to have youth and all this energy, but you need experience sometimes too, and quality players. It's sometimes quality is more important than quantity in terms of the NFL and getting results.
Definitely, dude. And it's you never know. It's something I'm always super fascinated by, and I would love to be friends with an NFL GM just to have this info. But it's the full deep dive on the general manager playbook, if you will, right? If you're Darren Muji, obviously he was with Denver, and you never know if say when training camp rolls around and we start having these cut downs, all of a sudden a 4th round pick gets released from whatever, the Saints.
Yep.
And maybe Darren Muji personally back in Denver had a 3rd round grade on him or a 2nd round grade on him, and he fell to round 4. And for whatever reason, Denver didn't pick him. He wasn't the decision maker, whatever. Like it was a personal favorite of his. Now this guy's out on the open market, and he has the power to go scoop him up. And he's, hey, I just got in my eyes, a former 2nd round type of player off the waiver wire.
Yep.
And he has 2 years into his NFL career. So I feel like I could still maybe develop him. So, I think there's just so many situations like that where GMs are kind of like, poaching opposing rosters isn't the best, terminology, but just kind of like looking at them with like Hawkeyes, just like waiting, kind of like waiting in the weeds. Like, I really like this young player, or this position that you guys have is really, really deep. You know what? Let me just monitor this. Right. And of course the waiver order is predetermined, but like, I bet you right now, if Muji was on this pod, he would probably say, or I don't think he'd probably say, but internally he would know, like, you know what, I'm eyeing a couple of different positional groups, positional battles around the league, maybe certain positions that the Jets are weak at, or maybe identifying players that he's really liked before in the past, maybe some former Bronco members that get released this upcoming upcoming training camp, that he's just like, maybe he's high on, so I think we can't rule stuff like that out.
No, especially because you have a lot of new staffs too that are, they're inheriting their team. Like, no, this guy's gonna fit my culture. This guy's gonna fit my scheme. And there's gonna be a lot of roster shuffling all over the NFL, especially after mandatory minicamp. Where it's like, all right, we've seen what we have now. We have from that a training camp. You see a lot of maneuvering. So it'll be really interesting. If you guys have questions, put them in our chat. I shared a link. If you want to come on and talk to us, it's cool. Breaking news.
Well, actually, it's not breaking news because I saw it pop up in the chat before. Who was it? Armand. Yeah, the Chargers signed Bud Dupree 1 year, $6 million. And it's funny, we're talking about like these summer signings, like
there's one.
Chargers, it's a win now team. Like, hey, if Bud Dupree can come in and maybe give you something, awesome. Or in the event that whatever Khalil Mack gets hurt or has to miss some time or something, it's just like, you got like a solid NFL vet to kind of take some snaps and maybe maybe the drop off from Khalil Mack to the next guy isn't as bad because you have Dupree kind of in the middle. So just I think it's just smart roster building.
Do you think we get into the Sanders conversation if the Browns cut him? I don't think the Browns are cutting him, dude. I think Shador is set with the Browns. What do you think?
Bro, from everything that I've heard and seen so far, he's looked awesome.
Hi, guys. What's up, Michael? Hi, guys. Which draft pick do you think will have the biggest impact on the Jets this season?
I'm going to say biggest impact. I think it's got to be Membu, just because he's going to be the starting right tackle of the team. So many eyes are going to be on him.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And that you're hoping he solidifies the offensive line. You're starting right tackle. But if we go past him, you can make a really good. You can say Mason Taylor, man. He could be wide receiver 2 in this offense, depending how things go. If you go Garrett 1, maybe Brees out of backfield. If you're not having a lot of trust in your wide receiver group, Mason Taylor could have not saying 100 catches, but he could have a pretty big year too.
Yeah, I mean it's. Like, yeah, you addressed it before, but after Garrett, man, it gets pretty damn thin. So who's going to be that guy that steps up? And also, too, just something else to keep in mind, because we were talking about before, like maybe execs and coaches have their eyes on certain players. Maybe certain players don't know it yet, but naturally they start working in the system and they start developing like crazy. Like, what if Rucker takes a couple steps forward and is like looking way, way better? Not like whatever Hawkinson or Laporta or Kittle or something like that, but he's really turning heads and making plays. And all of a sudden it's just like, okay, now all of a sudden we have 2 options at the tight end position as opposed to 120-year-old coming in from LSU who's a question mark. I don't know, just certain situations like that. It's kind of fun to think about it, especially at this point in the in the summer.
And that's why Corley being banged up is kind of annoying, where it's like, all right, man, he's hurt already this early in camp, where it's so important, not camp, OTAs, where this is pivotal. He can show what he can do to his staff, where Aaron Glenn talked about him. He's like, well, we thought we know what he is, but we haven't seen him because he's been off the field. That's where you've got to take advantage of every rep you can as a young player, because if not, you're probably going to get replaced by somebody else. They're not going to sit around and wait. That was one of Parcells' big things, was like, your best ability is availability. If you're not on the field, you can be the best player in the locker room, but you got to actually show me on the field what you can do. So hopefully Corley gets back on the field fast. I'm not sure what his injury is, but he's got to get moving.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, like I don't know what he's dealing with. I don't know what's going on. You know what's kind of funny? The one player that I feel like Corley's maybe role within the offense. You know who Khalif Raymond is from the
Yeah,
Lions?
he used to play for the Jets.
Yeah. So I think that would probably be like my ideal role for Corley in year one, if assuming that we're gonna see like a similar offense to the Lions.
You know what's interesting too is that Glenn was like, they talked about Aaron Smith being a returner. And he's like, listen, we find guys that have great skill sets. They may have not have done it before. They could try it here. There's no reason why it's like no stone unturned. And I like that too, man, where it's like, all right, like they're trying to find ways to maximize the potential of every player. Maybe new them, but it's worth the shot, especially when you have this team this young, man, where it's like, we've got to figure it all out, must have figured out as a unit. So why not take a shot at it? And I think it's probably the right approach at this point.
Yeah, man. I mean, just kind of put yourself in Glenn's shoes. Like, for example, like the Jets roster really, really well.
Yep.
But if you get a job with the Browns or the Saints, you're stepping in with like fresh eyes, new ideas. And it's just like, okay, well, why were we ranked bottom 5 in this category? Let's try something new. You know what? I really like this guy's quickness, his elusiveness with the football in his hands. You know what? Let's put him back at kick return, even if that thought didn't even cross who was it? Dennis Allen's mind. You know?
No, I agree. So now mandatory mini camps next week. What do you think are probably like the 3 biggest storylines going into mini camp?
Like from a media perspective, probably how Fields is going to look. Will there be any sort of weird distractions and contract issues or contract offers, I should say?
I think that's going to be the first. Would be Justin Fields. Does he hold on to the ball? How does he look? And I think it's going to be a lot of contract stuff, man, because the media is going to get their chance to talk about, hey, I think it's going to be what, Quincy, it'll be Sauce, it'll be Garrett, Brees. I don't think Jermaine will probably answer any questions. He's coming off a major injury, but I think those guys are going to be pressed a little bit like, all right, what do you think about this?
Well,
Garrett's already talked about, but the other guys haven't.
Well, we got to throw AVT in there as well.
True. Another guy.
Yeah, AVT, John Simpson. Simpson's in a bit of a different story, or a different case, but yeah, I don't know, man. And it's interesting too, like hearing Glenn talk a lot about Quincy and like saying like, hey, I love you as a player, but I feel like you can really do one quick side tangent. One thing that I felt was pretty maybe intriguing. So Glenn didn't like dive into the specifics. Like, I need Quincy to get better at this and that and this and that, and like actually giving the media things, right? But the way Glenn was talking about it was actually not the way he had it worded was Quincy can be working on these things right now. Not like we have to get into the regular season to actually start making these adjustments. No, it could happen right now with no contact in practice. So I wonder if it's speed. I wonder if it's strength. I wonder if it's like leadership role in the locker room, lateral movement, something like dropping in coverage, rushing the passer, like certain technique, things like that, which is really, really positive. Like that's really, really impressive to me.
Yeah.
Because if you're a coach and you're like, hey, you can get better at the weaknesses, which I'm telling you, and you're responding well, but we don't have to wait until week 1 to actually start seeing improvement. Like we can start today in June. That could be sweet because now all of a sudden you've extended the development time by months for Quincy. I mean, in other words, there's a chance that we can get that Quincy could take a huge step forward from now until the start of the season. And we already know Quincy's a former all-pro beast linebacker. So if Glenn feels like he can take another step forward, I mean, the sky's the limit for him. But that would be the reason why I bring it up. If he's in a contract year, maybe Glenn is like, okay, let's see how he responds. If he doesn't answer the bell, maybe this isn't really the guy that we should hand out a multi-year deal to. Although I would bring Quincy back personally.
It's funny you said that because when the more Glenn talked, I'm like, this sounds like a guy they want to keep because like you could be a leader and you got to figure they're going to offset, losing CJ Mosley in terms of that big leader, that big presence in the locker room. You have Jamie and Sherwood taking over that role, but still a lot of inexperience there where it's like, all right, you could be our veteran spokesperson for our linebacker group and do a lot of really good things. And I was like, wow, I'm like, really, Aaron Glenn really likes this guy a lot. Like he's putting a lot on his plate and speaking so highly of him where he's, 29 years old, I think, right? Or just turned 29. So he's still got some good years left in him. where maybe you're right, where it's like, all right, we're going to put this all on your plate, see how you embrace it, see how you handle it, how the locker room reacts to you, how you can work in our defense. If it pans out, add 2 more years to his deal. Keep him around for a couple more years as one of your building blocks.
Yes, sorry. I was just looking to see if CJ Mosley is signed with another team, but he hasn't yet. Yeah. Anyway, I think it should be interesting. I'm thinking about these contracts. You got to get one of them done. One between Wilson and Gardner, preferably. I would say. I don't know. I mean, Wilson, I have more done because of just his role and impact on the offense, and just such a. If Garrett has a down, if we're ending the year and Garrett has 600 yards, 700 yards,
yeah,
we are in for probably a lot of long days on Sundays if this offense isn't moving and Garrett is not doing much at all. So that's something that I really want to just get handled. Like we need him so desperately on offense. Whereas with Gardner, you can definitely make the argument you can buy low because he's coming off a so-so season. So it's like,
oh, dude, I don't think you're buying low, man. I think Sauce thinks very highly of himself, and he knows what the market is. He wants to break the bank. I don't think you buy low with him at all. I think he wants max money here.
Well, what's max money to you is
highest paid corner in football.
And if the Jets come back and say we're not going to give you that, but we'll make you a top 5 highest paid.
I don't think he goes. And this is just me guessing, completely guessing here, but I think he wants because he's very active on social media talking about, oh, this guy got paid, and you see he's under Vayner Sports now. Vayner Sports is actually tweeting out 2nd year in a row, best corner in football. That's going to be their approach in negotiations. This is our guy. We want to be paid as such. PFF says we're the best. We want to be the best. Show me the money. I think he wants to break the bank, dude. I think there's no doubt about that.
If that's the case, man, I would just focus my attention on Wilson.
See, so GM Ian just changed his whole approach just now.
If you're not going to consider anything outside of being number 1 coming off that season, and if Muji's not willing to go there, because if Muji was willing to go there, I think it probably would have been done by now.
Yep. I mean, that's the whole, what they're saying, there's negotiations to play. I think you have a filling out process. What do you want? What are we going to give you? I want to be number 1 paid wide corner in football. Okay. That's probably a little more than we thought you wanted. So they're filling it out now, but I guarantee you, dude, he wants to be top paid. I don't think there's a doubt, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah. I mean, he could definitely,
but he
paid that, which is totally cool.
But he could back it up by saying, look at all these stats. And let's keep in mind, fans have been touting him as the best corner in football. Last year was a down year, but he could also say, I was injured, I was this, I was that. Like, defense sucked.
But the Jets can come back and be like, well, there was tackling issues, there was getting
I agree.
Issues,
I completely agree with you.
Issues, getting a little physical with the football in the air. Like Gardner to me was not the best corner in football last season.
Surtain was great. I mean, there's a lot of guys that were good last year.
But to me, you got to be willing to negotiate. Like, if you want to be here, you're going to actually negotiate. Not, if Muji, slaps down a contract, hey, you're going to be the 3rd highest paid, the 4th highest paid, the 2nd highest paid corner in football, and it's just nope, off the table.
I think that's going to happen.
Are we going to really wait and not do anything?
I mean, that's
actually he's not, because we still have the 5th-year option. So it's all of this year and all of next year.
Well, that's where the holding out comes in and distraction comes in. So
and Glenn's not about it. So,
but listen, I'm on
here.
I'm playing devil's advocate here. I just we've been in this situation before. We went through the whole Revis experience. Not saying
Revis was on,
but I'm just saying it's not the same player. But in Sauce's eyes, he thinks he's one of the best corners of football and wants to be paid accordingly, especially when he sees everybody in his class getting paid. He sees all the guys in his position, they all get paid crazy money. He wants it. Yeah. So now you can say, well, I'm with you, dude. We said in the offseason, we want to see, Glenn probably wants to see his work ethic, his film study, his commitment to the game, all these things. If he's showing that to you now, which we don't know, nobody's talked to him. Okay. He's putting the parameters in place to do the right thing for the Jets and be a long-term answer. Now we get his financial demands. Top 8 corner in football. That's a huge nugget to pay right there. How do you handle it? And if he says, I want, just in theory, whatever, $100 million. If you offer him $85 million, like, you know what? You're discounting my value here. Then he holds out. That's how it usually works.
Yeah, no, I'm not no, I'm not saying that Gardner isn't worth, because there's a world where Gardner plays this year, and with the cap assuming going up again next year, now all of a sudden he goes out and proves that he's the best corner in football, and you have to pay more.
Risky. Yeah, you pay. Well, dude, you could make that case. The Jets could have gained money last year. You look at this the offseason stuff because you changed your regime, but a lot of guys at corner were getting paid proactively. And you were like, well, you wish the Jets would have did that, and they didn't because whatever. And now here where you are in, June with, and I get what you're saying. It's easy to say, let him play this year out. We'll do it next year. A lot of guys don't want to do that. He'd be like, I'm like, in his world, I'm grossly underpaid right now. I've earned it. I want it. Give it to me, or I'm not going to show up. We see holdouts every year. We've seen with the Jets and other teams. I mean, Reddick was an idiot, but it's with Sauce. You can kind of from his representation side, from his agent side, I could see why they'd want to do it 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see if I was Gardner, I would do the same thing. You know what I mean? But I think where we're disagreeing is in the hypothetical that being the second paid corner is off the table and it's not worth willing to negotiate around. Like, it's either number one or I'm not showing up and get rid of me. I think at that point you have to ask the question, okay, how bad does he really want to be here? That I don't think might not be happening at all, Yeah,
but I mean, for players, do they really? I mean, this is gonna sound terrible, but do they really care about where they're playing or how much money they're getting paid? Like, if I'm not getting the money here, I'll go somewhere else. Like, I mean, look at in the past, like the Jets traded Keyshawn Johnson. You're out of here. Like, they traded players. Like Revis got traded. You're out of here. We can't. There's different ways of going. Like your demands exceed the expectations of the player, right?
Yeah, because we constantly see, especially a quarterback, like the next highest paid guy is never really the best guy unless it's Pat Mahomes, and you can argue Josh Allen. But and one thing too, by the way, is the corner market isn't as maybe inflated as like D tackle and some of these other, because we're seeing like certain wide receivers are getting paid so much relative to other positions of the team. Corner hasn't really reached that full mark yet. So right now, the highest paid corner, or actually, hold on, that was in 2024. In 2025, the top highest paid corner is Derek Stingley at $30 million.
Exactly.
At number 2, it's JC Horn at $25 million. So there's a $5 million gap between Horn at 2 and Stingley at 1. If you present Gardner a contract offer at 29 or 30 to say tie the highest paid, and it's no, and I'm not showing up, and I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. Like, it's you either give me 35, you got to exceed and make me the number one.
Mm-hmm.
I just, at that point I would be maybe questioning it a little bit, but I still, assuming Gardner bounces back, $30 million a year is worth it. Again, with the cap going up.
Well, that's the thing. And that's where I'm saying, like, you have that, like, a lot of these guys, they want to set the market. All right, it gets reset over and over and over. And that's why when the guys' new contracts come out, it's usually more than the last guy that got signed, right? So what Stingley got. Like, to me, it's just, I think you pay it. I genuinely think that. Now, the question comes where we can argue about, okay, we know what we think Sauce is going to be as a player, right? We've already seen All-Pro. We've seen that. Garrett Wilson it's very, very difficult for a variety of reasons. It's what's his demand? Like, how much does he want a year? Like, how is he valuing himself? Like, look at the wide receiver contracts. You just talked about it. They're insane. Even some of the free agent contracts were ridiculous for like fringe players. Like, all right, that doesn't really make much sense. So you look at that, and then you say, what is Garrett Wilson? We think we know what he can be, but is he top 10, top 8, top 7? Like, where is he? And then you have the caveat is, how is he going to be in this offense with this quarterback? He really hasn't had that chance to, like, what value do you pay Garrett on? Like, what's his parameters?
And that's why I'm more concerned. By the way, sorry, my light died.
You're good.
What was I going to say? Oh, so that's why I'm more concerned with Garrett getting done. We have when I'm thinking about the two players, Gardner and Wilson, both very, very, very good. Both very, very, very important. Both the best at their positions on the Jets. Garrett is easily the wide receiver one. Garrett is easily corner two. But when I'm thinking about what these guys are getting paid, so I pulled up in the background here wide receiver contract, right? Who's the highest paid? It's Jamar Chase at $40.2 million per season. Coming in at number 2, though, there's a $7 million drop to DK Metcalf at 33, and then T Higgins at 28.7. So, it's, and by the way, dude, Jamar Chase, 4 years, $161 million total, 73.9 guaranteed. That is a crazy contract.
So then go down to like the eighth receiver.
Eighth receiver is, ironically enough, eighth receiver is Devontae Adams at 22 mil per season, but it's 44 in total value. So he's eighth in total value.
So what would be like the equivalent of Garrett Wilson? Would it be like something like a Devontae Smith contract, or like what would be the player you could say, okay, he's the equivalent of what we have here, and he can be paid accordingly? Like, what's his NFL blueprint in terms of a contract?
I would say it's probably going to be definitely top 5. Based off of like what I'm looking at here. I mean, Chris Godwin right now is top 5 based off of average salary at 22. I think Garrett's probably, if Garrett gets 25 mil a year, so what is that, 4 years, 100 mil, that would make Garrett Wilson the 4th highest paid receiver in football.
Now, and that's wild though. But do you think his talent matches that contract?
I do. With the cap going up, yes. But also I think Garrett is more Jomo. I think the value that he provides to the offense. Like, let me ask you this. If Gardner, for whatever reason, misses the entire year, how do you feel about the Jets defense?
I feel fine.
If Garrett misses the entire year, how do you feel about the Jets offense?
But is that an indictment on the player or the situation the Jets are in? And I get what you said. We've talked about this. You're one Garrett Wilson injury away from being in deep trouble because you have literally no playmakers on offense the defense is worried about other than Breece Hall and maybe Mason Taylor. That's it. So, but that's more of the situation that you're in. So do you overpay because we have no other receivers, or do you pay him because you think he's a great player that's going to be top 3 in the NFL at some point over his career? That's because like the Jets have made that mistake in the past too when they're so poorly managed their roster. They overpaid for guys because they were desperate. And I'm not saying that you're overpaying because you're dead, but like because your wide receiver room sucks doesn't mean you overpay Garrett Wilson. You may overpay him because you think right now it may be an overpay. 2 years from now, it's a great value.
But I don't think 30 mil a year would be considered an overpay for Garrett. I think either like what you just proposed, it will still wind up you'll still wind up in the same destination, which is Garrett Wilson being on the team for a long time, who's a young player, who's been really, really productive with just a not so great situation around him with quarterback, with O-line, with coaching, with play calling. It's just been a mess around him, but yet we're seeing really, really good production. And you kind of feel like without Garrett Wilson, this offense is going to stall. Not saying that I think the offense is going to roll through Wilson. I think we're still going to be a run-heavy team.
Yep.
But just if you get rid of Garrett and you're a defensive coordinator, you can just put your one-on-one coverage on the outside at this stage and just say load the box up,
of course,
and force Justin Fields and force these receivers to beat our corners on solo coverage on the outside.
Hey, look at your best friend, Oscar the Grouch.
Oscar, what's going on, man?
Tyson and Ian, is $32 million for Sauce a reasonable number given the quarterback market right now?
So that would make him the highest paid by $2 million from an annual basis. Now, you know what's really the argument? Probably guaranteed money is probably the top. You know, the number one thing that a player would want, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean reasonable. I think it's generous, right? Like you're making the highest paid corner in football by $2 million. So it's a bold thing by the Jets.
Yeah, because normally, like you'll see contracts just exceed them the amount of money differentiating the like two different spots would be like 500K, like half a mil. So when Stingley's making 30, Gardner's making 30.5 or would make 30.5. Oh, Gardner's the highest paid, maybe one extra mil guaranteed.
Yeah.
So, to become the highest paid guy. But there's been weird situations like Jamar Chase just blew the contract, just blew the entire market out of the water. Again, at whatever it was, 40 plus mil per season.
Crazy.
And next highest is DK Metcalf at 33. So in DK, that's a pretty big contract. And DK, I don't think is a top 5 receiver. So, these guys are going to get paid. That's the reality. I think really, we're arguing about the maybe like 10, what would be the word? Like just a couple million. Mm-hmm. And really, if you are the New York Jets, you can definitely make the argument, who the hell cares? If $3 million extra is going to get the deal done and not get the deal done, like that's going to $3 million is going to be a deciding factor. You can definitely argue, you know what? We're not in a position like the Eagles or the Bills or the Ravens or something like that. The cap's going to continue to go up. I don't see the NFL losing popularity anytime soon. Who cares? Just do it.
Yeah, I mean, especially when they're young building block players that should be here for the foreseeable future, where it's like lock these guys up. Hopefully have a nice run next couple of years. Question from Damon is, with the disaster that was the last couple of years and the schedule this year, what are our realistic expectations for the team? Realistic.
Sorry, I'm just looking at Chris's comment here. Jefferson is at 35, CD's at 34. So I'm looking at Spotrac right now. Let me pop over to a different website and just... Oh, actually, you know what it might be? I think maybe those guys' extensions kick in maybe afterwards. I'm not sure. Like after that final year of the rookie deal or something like that. Man, I don't know. I'll dive into it. Let me pop over to Over the Cap real quick. Yeah. Okay, so Jamar Chase, 40.2. Justin Jefferson, 35 per year. CeeDee Lamb, 34 per year. And both of those guys are 26. DK's 28. And then AJ Brown would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at 28 at 32 mil. So we would actually look at Garrett, and if he wants to be a top 5 highest paid, he would have to probably get he would definitely have to get 32 plus mil per season for Garrett Wilson. So total money, it would be cheaper to sign Gardner compared to Garrett.
I agree. It's gonna be so. Muji's got his hands full. Realistic expectations based on what we know and the schedule. The early part of the schedule, we talked about this when it first came out, could be a little difficult. The team could start out slow and finish strong. To me, I still think with all the talent they have, there are question marks, and we talked about it for the last hour. I still think they could be a 6, 7, 8 win team if they play very good defense, sound, fundamental physical football, and quality special teams. I think they can win that. I don't see less than 5 wins. I don't see less than 6 wins, to be honest with you. I think the level of competition, the accountability, I think Justin Fields will be enough to win games. He's not going to be a liability at quarterback. I think they'll compete week in and week out, dude, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think competing and kind of showing that you belong, showing that your schemes work, showing, the coaching that's taking place throughout the weekend in camp is getting through to players, and players are learning and they're getting better. That really is like what I'm kind of focused on this season over because if we get, think about Gase's first year, dude. That was a mess, but we had 7 wins.
Yeah. But you can also tell if they're well coached or not. And that's one of the biggest telling points is this team prepared? West Coast games, traveling games, are you getting max effort? Are you seeing improvement throughout the season where you can literally see players improving? You see a lot of growth and development. Then I think you have some faith where it may not result in wins, but you can see, all right, listen, we've seen so much bad football. We know good football. Maybe they're losing because it's just a lack of talent. The other team may just be better in terms of talent, better quarterback play, whatever it is, more playmakers. So, I think we'll know, by the end of the year if we've seen enough to be encouraged or discouraged.
Yeah, dude, we'll have the answers in time. We'll know, where this team kind of stacks up. How are they competing? One super annoying thing from the last couple of regimes was feeling like the game was over in the first quarter. And even in those seasons with the Detroit Lions just losing all those games, just coming up short every single week, like very rarely did you feel like they were losing because of coaching. You felt like, okay, this team is just they lack the talent.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. We wrapped up a lot. I offered a link. Nobody wanted to call in, which is fine. Everybody's in their Wednesday mode. Did you have anything else? We covered a lot, man. We covered OTAs. We covered contracts. We covered a lot, man.
Yeah, man. No, I hope the Jets continue pumping out all these different press conferences.
Yeah, no, I'm so I'm just fascinated by the player press conferences, dude. I am, because you're getting such detailed answers and like you're finding out what's going on behind the scenes. Because it seems like the Jets are locking a lot of things up. Like they're not letting a lot of information out. But I think next week's the first week we'll learn a lot more because there's more player access next week.
Cool. Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it.
So thank you, guys. We'll get back on our normal schedules. We've been all over the place the last month or so. So ideally the goal is every Tuesday at 7:00, but my schedule's been crazy. His been crazy. So we apologize for all the fluctuating and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Back to Tuesdays at 7.
Yep. And next week be your channel. And we'll try more call-ins because we're getting used to that. I can't wait for you to get some of our crazy callers, man, because I can't wait to see how you handle it.
Yeah, dude, it'll be fun, man.
Do you want to share your thoughts on the Knicks firing Thibodeau or no?
I love like Thibodeau's kind of like old school approach. I think it's, in this day and age, like the old school mentality's like dwindling away. So I do respect Thibodeau, but I gotta be honest, I think, and I'm not a Knicks fan here, by the way, but I think it was probably the right move. It kind of reminds me of when the Raptors fired Dwayne Casey and promoted Nick Nurse, because like the Knicks are here and you don't necessarily know if Thibodeau is, like, for me at least, I feel like we've seen the ceiling of Tibbs, and I don't know if he can get them over the hump. Now, granted, the East might be wide open next year, maybe an easier path to the finals, but I feel like, maybe the Knicks make one roster tweak, whatever that might be, bring in someone else with a new energy, new voice to kind of push them over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Knicks fan, man. I was disappointed because I think Tibbs, they've improved every year. He gave his heart and soul to his team. He brought this team back to relevance. So I'm like, okay, if you make a move like this, make sure you're getting an upgrade. Like, don't, like, I mean, that's, K-Dude, I am 1,000% with you. You want to make this bold move, and we have no idea what the players are saying in the locker room. Maybe the players kind of tuned them out. The defensive lapses, not getting back, all that stuff. I get it. But who's the replacement? You better impress us with that. Like, I talk about Johnny Bryant, all the different guys. But listen, because now you have a win-now team. You're handing a championship-level team right now. Don't come back and take a big step backwards next year. You're not allowed to do that because you just kicked out your coach that got you there. So, I think there's a lot of pressure on them, man.
Yeah, Malone's out there.
Supposedly he's not on their list. He's not a guy that's a candidate.
What about Jay Wright? The Villanova coach.
They're saying it. I think the list I saw was Jay Wright, Johnny Bryant, Dan Hurley, swing big with him, Jason Kidd from the Mavericks. So it's interesting, man. I didn't like the move, but like the fear of the unknown scares you. Like, what you have in Tibbs. Maybe he's a little bit outdated, but he got a lot out of this team, more than we've ever expected. So don't take a huge step back. Like, don't give a win now team to an incompetent coach and completely destroy it. So we'll see, man. It's never a dull moment, man. When I got my phone was lighting up. I'm like, what the hell could be going on? I thought it was Jets news. I'm like, did Jets do something?
Yeah.
They just fired their coach. I'm like, oh my God. So who knows?
Would you re-sign Bridges, by the way?
That's a great question. You gave up all that friggin', you get 5 first-round picks for him?
Yep.
I think, and that's the thing. It's like, can he be better with a different coach? Like, will he flourish in a different system? Like, you don't, like, you saw him with the Nets how good he was. You saw some glimpses this year defensively. He probably won 2 games from the playoffs. It's like, man, he hits that mid-range jumper, which is good. So that's a good question, man. He's probably not going to get, probably get $25 million a year, I would guess.
Because something else to think. Oh no, he'd probably get way more than that. I would assume. One thing I was thinking about too was like maybe the Knicks, because I've seen some, some like small Giannis rumors and the KD stuff. I'm thinking like I wonder if maybe the Knicks are planning to make a move, and one of those players that they're eyeing doesn't necessarily want to be coached by Tibbs.
That could be.
And maybe would want like his guy or something because if Kevin Durant is coming in, he's not going to just fall in line and, Yeah, I know. I'm just throwing out there.
The player could be Karl Anthony Towns. That could be the player just can't deal with Tibbs. He could be listen, man, because I don't match your defensive mindset. I don't match your like, you know what I mean? Because it seemed like him and Brunson were on the same page for half the season. Like they got worse as the season played out. So it's like maybe it's Karl Anthony Towns. He's paying him what, $50 million a year now. Like he's your centerpiece of your team. Give him, I guess, his guy that can work with Brunson too. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting, man. Like I don't know. I get really nervous when you have a team this close that you're gonna screw it up. You know, that's because I'm just used to my team's always screwing it up. So,
well, I think because Brunson took a little bit less.
Yep.
Cat's under contract.
And I know
Sorry, I'm getting a call. I believe McBride is still under contract. Like, yeah, I mean, the East next season is just completely wide open, bro. With Tatum's injury and Giannis potentially on the move. Yo, if Giannis gets traded to the West, like the East is up for grabs, like completely up for grabs. And I'm not like saying Boston's gonna suck or anything, but I don't know.
Well, now we covered the Knicks and the Jets all in one show. So thank you guys for joining us. Like I said, next week, 7 o'clock, most likely on his channel. We'll get back to our schedule, and then we got mandatory minicap talk next week, and then we have a nice little break until training camp comes back, man, and we don't sleep anymore.
Yeah, man. Then the updates really start rolling in.
We'll talk to you guys later on. Have a good night.